Sir Jamaican Tide Pod's Adventure 3, The Final Chapter. By Charlie, Will, Ben, and Mr. Medford. Once again upon a time, a small tide pod was born in the jungles of Jamaica and named Mr. Mexican Turtle. His father was the king of all of Jamaica, and the tide pod's regime began after he passed. Mr. Mexican Turtle, or Mr. M, wasn't a very chill dude. His dad, Mexican Turtle Sr., was a great and merciful leader who let Jamaica prosper. However, Mr. M was a harsh dictator who destroyed Jamaica for selfish reasons. There were very few survivors, one being Sir J's own mother. Mr. M was very physically strong and intelligent, however, so he still was able to build up a large number of loyal troops. They conquered other Caribbean islands, and even began to attack other nations. Eventually, many nukes were dropped on Jamaica while Mr. M and his army were having a meeting, obliterating them and the rest of the island. In modern day, Jr starts trying to find new people to help him after defeating the Eclipse, forming the 6th Legion. The 6th Legion wanted to go spar for training, so Jr took them to a random universal cave where he knew there would be evil bananas to fight. The 6th Legion chopped them in half and started eating them. After that the 6th Legion wanted to train more, so they went to a universe with a planet called Farongia. They jumped from floating island to floating island to try to find something to fight when they spotted something on a distant floating island. They jumped across a few more to get there and found an outpost from the higher UPS of the Thuots. What the outpost was doing there no one knew, so they jumped inside to ask to spar, and since Jr has the mental power of at least 3 bricks, he tried to think of a really good plan to help them. The Thuots outpost began to radiate cray-cray bananas amounts of energy, so the 6th Legion ran away and jumped into their spaceship, need to go back to their base. A super-duper Sigma Rick Barry is Sigma and chill and pretty cute and asked what was good, and then he got spread into a sheet of his face and joined the 6th Legion. The 6th Legion then took Nee on a wee little road trip, watching Diary of a Wimpy Kid 4, The Long Haul for inspiration. They arrived at their destination, a rock, and ate it. Yummy in my tummy. On the way back, they looked at other movies to watch and remembered that they used up all the power of Despicable Me 3. This made them feel pretty guilty, so they decided to restore it. They traveled once again to the core of Treedspicability Cot, the source of the power. This cot was formed eons ago, when Despicable Me and Despicable Me 2, two ancient primordial forces, collided and became one. Peter Griffin was a pizza, so thankfully he was not able to stop this event from happening. After the 6th Legion arrived at Cot, they noticed something very odd. Cot leaves waves of power around it from all its history. However, while they expected there to not be any around it since they recently used up all the power, there appeared to have been very little power expelled for centuries. First, they tried simply blasting it with more power, but it couldn't absorb any. They started brainstorming, and decided to send Cot back in time to when it was more powerful. It was so powerful that the time reversal did nothing, so they then tried sending time backwards in the areas around it to see what had happened. They looked around, and saw that exactly 761 years ago, the Peter Griffin pizza grew an arm, and paddled itself to Cot. After a few seconds, everything went dark, and Peter Griffin emerged, surrounded by most of the power of Despicable Me 3. This was even more powerful than the 6th Legion had realized, as they thought they could match the full power of Despicable Me 3 even at its prime, but soon realized that their combined level of power even now was dwarfed by it. They were about to stop looking back in time, when they saw Barney the dinosaur and Peter Griffin holding hands and frolicking through the fields of friendship, likely an evil duo. They now were left alone at Cot in the present day, unsure of what to do. Thankfully, Captain Cookie's 3 came along and licked Cot, making it tell them exactly how to power it up. Before it explained, at Captain Cookie's 3 joined the 6th Legion. Cott told them that Kurt Cobain's friend's sister's adopted daughter's biological uncle's dog's mother's owner's roommate's sense of innocence personified contained a key that they must find. They got to Kurt Cobain, who joined them and took them to his friend, who joined them and took them to his sister, who joined them and took them to her adopted daughter, who joined them and took them to her biological uncle, who joined them, and took them to his dog, who joined them and took them to his mother, who joined them and took them to her owner, who joined them and took them to her roommate, who joined them and ripped out her sense of innocence, who joined them and remembered that she had a key. She handed this key to Jess, and a beam from it pointed in a direction which they walked in. Then the Queen of England freaking died. They got into knee and flew off to the beam's location, and realized it led to the strange Thuot's outpost. They entered, although the cray-cray bananas amount of power kicked in. They ran, but were about to die from the power. Just then, Jess collapsed into a door with a keyhole which he opened with the key. The door flew open since he was putting his weight onto it, and the power stopped emitting. As Jess entered the door, he realized it was an infinite black void. He looked behind him, and saw that all the other members were here, and that the door was gone. He tried to teleport out, but his magic had no ability here. After meeting up, the 6th Legion realized there was a red dot far off in the distance. After walking for several trillions of picoseconds, they found themselves at the red dot, which turned out to be a restful cube. They asked the restful cube to teach them its ways, but the restful cube was too restful and too cubular to respond. After gnawing on its corner, the restful cube caved and told them that it had ended up in this void in the same way as them. It saw the outpost from Thuot's, went inside, and woke up here. The cube joined the 6th Legion, and they started walking in a random direction. Nothing appeared different for billions of microns, but eventually they started to find strange masses of purple goo. They touched one of these globs for a tiny fraction of a second, but it still burned badly. They walked more and more, with the goo becoming more and more frequent, until they came across a large bubble of the goo. They tried touching it, but it burnt the same. Thankfully, Jess was carrying his trusty dusty rusty pusty grusty lusty justy nusty husty owl trowel, and cleaned it all up. Inside the center, there was nothing except for a red button on a pillar. This pillar, however, had no relations to Orenthal James Simpson whatsoever. Do you understand? I feel like you don't. This pillar and Orenthal James Simpson are completely unrelated, and have zero shared history. Okay, anyway, they pressed the button, the void started to disintegrate around them. Once the void was completely gone, they found themselves on the other side of the door. They saw the purple goo in the room, but it shriveled and evaporated. They saw the manager in charge of the outpost, and he was hunched over his desk and had strands of the goo going into his head. They woke him up, and realized it was the Rizzler. They asked him what happened, and he said that he was doing his job 761 years ago, but saw Peter Griffin Pizza begin to sprout his arm near Cott. He tried to stop this, but Barney jump-scared him, said it was purple goo time, and then shot out purple goo from his eyes, infecting and possessing the Rizzler and the room around him. The 6th Legion realized this must have been why Barney was friends with Peter, because he saved his evil or maybe even despicable plan, why the outpost was emitting so much power, because it was hijacked by Barney, and it explained what the point of the mask is. The Rizzler joined the 6th Legion and reported the incident to Thuot's. Thuot's responded by saying they would look into it. They also switched back on Cott's natural ability to recharge itself, meaning that the power of Despicable Me 3 would soon come back. They now left, unsure of what to do, but found a pretty crazy universe. Crazy Sergey was crazy once. They locked him in a room. A rubber room. A rubber room with rats. And rats make him crazy. They left, and saw a large, purple figure in the distance. They walked over, and saw a sign that said Quahog in purple lettering. They went up to the universe, and saw Peter Griffin, with the power of Despicable Me 3. Some new members ran in to fight him, but this was only due to their inexperience and overconfidence. They forgot that he had hundreds of times more power than them. He instantly struck down the new members with bolts of cosmic lightning, and turned to Jur-S. He struck down every other member of the 6th Legion, and tried striking Jur-S. Jur-S was still the most powerful member, but had vast amounts of skill. He leapt away from the bolt, fell on the ground as sheets of power came flying in horizontally. He jumped between two of them, and jumped out of a gap over the rest. Many giant fists came flying in from all directions, and Jur-S began to dodge them. He started getting tired and Peter only fired more and more fists, so Jur-S used the rest of his energy to deflect a fist into Peter, causing him to fumble, and allowing Jur-S just enough time to take the rest of the members and teleport as far away as possible. Jur-S took everyone to the base, where he brought all the killed members back to life and healed all the injured one. They realized that Peter was so evil that he was kinda like a villain and probably hates literature, among other things. This was a depressing time, but Seve Harvey made a special guest appearance, cheering everyone up. Seve Harvey even went as far as to eat his former twin, Steve Harvey, alive, and then join the 6th Legion. After this boost in spirits, the 6th Legion asked the Oats pretty please with chocolate sprinkles and a cherry on top to kill Peter, but they refused. The 6th Legion was pretty upsetty spaghetti about this, but Big Ounce saw them and decided to follow in Seve Harvey's ways and cheer them up. He brought them to a restaurant and bought them a nice meal, gave them all his power, died, and made Biggie Smalls join the 6th Legion. After this, his tombstone which contained his soul was added into the 6th Legion. The Rizzler gave out some double-chunk chocolate cookies, and Big Justice and AJ smelt it from across the multiverse. AJ asked him for a double-chunk cookie, but they were all eaten, and since they didn't have any chicken bakes, Big Justice was angry. The 6th Legion jumped in, but the Bufumo duo brought the boom. That's what they do, creating a boom wave that knocked them all back. 5 big booms were created by AJ and sent like baseballs towards the 6th Legion by Big Justice. They were targeting Jur-S, who dodged, blocked, and reflected the first 3 respectively, but the last 2 were sent together, and Jur-S was hit by 1. He was badly injured, but the Rizzler pleaded for the Bufumo duo to calm down. They're Costco guys, so of course they realized the errors of their ways and joined the 6th Legion. The 6th Legion scouted out the area, and saw some of Barney's purple goo modeled into a security camera on legs walking around. They tried to teleport back, but just before they could, the camera noticed them and shot out purple goo at them. They tried to use magic, but the purple goo appeared to be what blocked magic abilities, so they attempted to manually break free, but more goo was added until they were immobilized. Barney walked up to them, and they noticed he was wearing a strange robe with a symbol engraved on it. The symbol was a white fire with a blue glow around it surrounded by 6 blobs of different colors, with the entire thing having ram horns. This seemed familiar to Jur-S, but he didn't know why. Barney started summoning a large sphere of purple energy from above them, and seemed like he would fire it at the 6th Legion. The sphere was unstable from how powerful it was, so Barney threw it at the 6th Legion. They thought this was the end, but Jur-S had one last idea. He used the clownly power of deflecting it with his 6th sense of humor. The blast of power bounced back at Barney and struck him head-on, letting everybody work on freeing themselves. Just before Barney could completely recover, they all tore through the goo. They got their magic back, so they thought about teleporting away, but decided to fight Barney now that they had him off guard. Chazcam pulled out a cosmic sword from his third belly button and started slashing at Barney, while the other members flanked Barney and shot blasts of energy at him. Barney kept getting knocked back and seemed to be getting severely injured, but suddenly his eyes turned hyper-realistic and black and white and started crying blood. This was so scary, spooky, horrifying, terrifying, scaring, petrifying, bone-chilling, spine-tingling, blood-curdling, chilling, alarming, fearsome, eerie, and daunting that the 6th Legion all did a little dance in fear. Barney created a force field around himself, but he started to disintegrate inside of it. Instead of the ashes behaving normally, they amassed into a gelatinous orb, which hovered for a few moments. The force field suddenly disappeared, and the orb spun itself into a portal, which then collapsed in on itself, leaving nothing behind. This sounds pretty strange, but for the 6th Legion it was only a normal Grassland day afternoon. They continued onwards, but Chazcam finally realized why the symbol on Barney's cloak seemed familiar. He remembered that Lanrit had white flames for eyes, a blue head, ram horns, and the same 6 blobs of color as seen on the symbol. They headed back, and realized that the symbol was faintly engraved in the vacuum where the portal was. Chazcam touched it, and was gone, so all the other members did the same. They found themselves in what appeared to be identical surroundings, although the symbol they touched was inverted in color. Then things got pretty redonkulous, almost like a race. Slowly, they noticed everything getting more and more blurred and wobbly. At first, there were only minor discrepancies, but the rate of deformation was exponentially increasing, and soon the entire Sephuverse appeared as a headache-inducing mess of blurs. They managed to make it to a universe, where they saw all of time simultaneously occurring. They were very confused now, and eventually the distortions became too severe, and they could do nothing but sit down. Finally, after the equivalent of a few seconds, after the effects caused every member to pass out, the parts of time where the Sephuverse was empty began to register into the merged mass of time. This time was so vast it quickly overpowered the other distortions, resulting in a void-like area. The 6th Legion finally awoke and felt as if they had been drained of sanity, and that's really saying something, but felt better after some minutes. They stood up, and began to walk around. They heard a noise, which they followed, and could barely make out the figure of Barney, zooming through empty space. They locked their position to his, letting them follow closely behind him. Channeling Denzel Washington's spirit and power in their hearts, he was summoned and joined the 6th Legion, providing enough power for them to keep up with Barney's increasing speed. Eventually, they could see a beacon of purple light in the distance. They kept on Barney, making sure to keep themselves invisible, and could see a strange well was the source of the light. Barney arrived at the well, and jumped in. The 6th Legion hesitated, when a gigantic burst of purple light came out of the well. The void around them began to crumble into true nothingness, so they had no choice but to jump in. Once inside, they found themselves in an infinite plane with a white floor and a white sky, with no details except for a grid on the floor. Some of the members noticed that the spacing between the lines in the grid got smaller once you were closer to the ground, and got larger when you got further. They looked behind them and noticed 3 pillars making a triangle shape, all centered and turned toward a strange pillar of black void that extended infinitely into the sky. They looked at the first pillar and read a poem, which said that the pillar was that of the man in white and green, the man who was not quite lean, the man trapped in a dish of crust, sauce, and cheese, the man who had a family he casted away from a reprobate's disease. They realized this was referring to the Peter Griffin pizza, so they looked to the next pillar, which also had a poem. This poem said the pillar was that of the dinosaur whose desire can never be fulfilled, the purple craven who only appeared strong and skilled, the Tyrannosaurus on a quest of destruction for a fool, the malicious mascot with an ID fit for a ghoul. This was obviously talking about Barney, so they finally realized that the two were working together. They were unsure of the third pillar, but theorized it could be for Lanrit, although this idea was made even less certain when they read the poem. This poem said the pillar was that of the offspring of a faux saint, a misunderstood tyrant whose cries for help were faint, the emperor of a land of self-inflicted desolation, a beast who was forced to lose all sense of civilization. They had no clue who the third poem could be about other than Lanrit, and they realized that there was another poem on the giant pillar of void. They read it, and it said it was that of the preeminent aggregate of all that is wicked, a god who wishes for his worship which is restricted, the exalted flame of pure ubiquity, the fallen angel who chose into an optional path of iniquity. They now assumed this was Lanrit's poem, leaving the other one uncertain. They didn't know what to do now, but Rick Barry's face sheet touched the black pillar, and was instantly shot up into the sky. All the other members were left to watch, but they heard his voice. He told them that he was on an invisible platform not too far up, and that there were strange objects on it. The rest of the members went up, and landed on the platform. They noticed that it was a cube with invisible walls and an invisible ceiling, and saw the strange object. They were shaped like arcade cabinets, with screens that showed different pictures of strange worlds and a single red button. Text was visible on the top, but it was confusing. Most were strange strings of numbers, letters, and symbols, while others were unfamiliar names. The only one that was recognizable was Quahog. Jers pressed the button, and it created a bubble around it with a countdown. The other members got inside, and when the countdown ran down, they were all transported to the purple universe where they fought Peter Griffin. They assumed that the place they were in was a hub that Barney, Peter, Lanrit, and the person on the third pillar may use as transportation.